All right, boys and girls, it is time for the second part of our Daniel story. And you remember that yesterday we learned that Daniel loved God and he would pray to God 3 times a day. But there were some leaders who were jealous of Daniel because the king and him were such good friends. So they made a law, or tricked the king into making a law that anybody that worshipped or prayed to anybody else but King Darius would be what? Thrown into a den of hungry lions. That's right. And so Daniel was a man who believed God, and he always tried to do what was right. Well, before the law was made, Daniel had gone to his home 3 times every day to pray. He would go upstairs to a room that had a window that looked toward Jerusalem, where God's temple was. And there at the open window, Daniel had prayed to God. Anybody passing by could see Daniel up there praying. They knew that's what Daniel did. And Daniel didn't care because he loved to talk to God. And that was the most important thing to him. All right, so you can imagine what's going to happen if the leaders see him praying. So now what would Daniel do? The new law said that he can pray to God. If he went upstairs to pray by the open window, the men who were watching him would see it and tell the king. So what do you think Daniel would do? Do you think he would still open the window? Do you think he'd still pray to God 3 times a day where people could see? Well, nobody wants to be thrown into a den of hungry lions. Maybe if he just was quiet and he could pray quietly and in the corner of his house where nobody could see him. Or maybe he should just stop praying for the next 30 days, because it was just 30 days. How would your father feel, or your mom feel, or your family feel if you didn't talk to them for the next 30 days? That's how our Heavenly Father is. He wants to hear from us. So what do you think Daniel's going to do? Is he going to do the right thing and keep praying and obey God, or is he going to obey the king who's making a very bad law? What do you think? Well, if you said that Daniel kept praying to God, you are right. Daniel is so brave. After he heard about the new law, Daniel walked right upstairs to the window in his house, opened it wide, and began to pray. The jealous leaders were watching outside Daniel's house, and as soon as they saw Daniel kneeling down to pray to God, they were tattletales. Tattletale? Do you know what a tattletale is? A tattletale is somebody who goes to somebody in charge to get somebody else in trouble. That's like if you come to me and try to get your friend in trouble, you're a tattletale. All right, so that's what they did, only it was really serious because these leaders knew what would happen to Daniel, and they didn't care that Daniel would be thrown into a den of hungry lions. So they saw Daniel, and they ran to King Darius, and they said to King Darius, "Didn't you make a law for the next 30 days? Nobody can worship anybody else but you. Didn't you make that law? Or they'll be thrown into a den of hungry lions." Do these people sound very nice? No, they sound very tricky. And King Darius, he puffed up and was proud and said, "Why, yes, I did." And then they said, "Oh, King, we saw Daniel praying to his God. So what are you going to do about it, King?" Oh, King Darius then knew what he had to do. He also knew that he had been tricked. He saw what those men had done, and now he was humble. That's the opposite of proud. Now he was humble that his friend was going to be put into a den of hungry lions. And so he tried to think of all kinds of different ways to save Daniel, but once a law was made, it could not be changed, not even by the king who made it. And so they reminded King Darius of that. They said, "Okay, remember, you can't change any of your laws." Oh, poor King Darius. He had to make the order to have Daniel arrested and lowered down into a den. Now, the den where the lions were kept was more like a cave or a basement, and that's why he had to be lowered down. So the soldiers, they brought Daniel and took him right to the opening and lowered him into the den, and King Darius stood at the opening. So King Darius is looking down inside like a cave or basement. He knows his friend has been lowered down there, and he knows there's some very mean, hungry, scary lions down there. And so he calls out to his friend and he says, "Oh, Daniel, I just pray that the God that you serve will save you from these lions." And so then he had a stone rolled over the top, and then there was some wax or mud to seal the cracks, and the king pressed the top of his ring into some mud, and his seal was put onto that mud or wax. And if a person saw that king's seal from his ring, they knew that they had to leave it alone, because if they touched it or tried to undo what the king did, they could be in trouble. And so poor Daniel was down there all by himself with those lions, and there was nothing that King Darius could do. And so what do you suppose happened next? Do you think the lions attacked Daniel, growled at him, scratched him? And the scariest part, do you think they really did eat Daniel? Well, if you said, no, they didn't do that, you are right. Daniel had obeyed God and put his trust in God, and now God took care of Daniel. The lions came close by, but they did not roar, they did not bite. They might have acted as friendly little kittens that you could pet, I don't know. But do you know how that was possible? How is it possible that these hungry lions left Daniel alone? It's because of God. God sent an angel down to shut the lions' mouths. They could not eat Daniel if they tried, because the angel kept their mouths shut. Okay? Daniel might have even curled up next to them to keep warm during the night. So while Daniel is sleeping and at rest and at peace that God is taking care of him, who do you think is worried and scared about his friend and what might happen to his friend? King Darius. He is up all night and he's worried. And so as soon as the sun came out, he ran to the opening of the cave, and he had the stone rolled away, and he yelled down inside and said, "Oh, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve, kept you safe from the lions?" From inside the cave. Oh, King Darius heard Daniel say, "Oh, King, my God has kept me safe. Safe from the lions. They've not even hurt me at all." Oh, how happy the king was to know that his friend was safe. He ordered his soldiers to lift Daniel up out of the lion's den. Daniel did not have a scratch on him. Daniel had trusted and obeyed God, and God had kept him safe. So King Darius, then he had learned a lesson. Adults learn lessons all the time, even kings. And he made a new law, and he said, now the people should not worship him, but they should worship the one true God. Don't you think that's an amazing law? Yes, well, it's the same God that we should be worshiping. And we should worship him because we love him and all the wonderful things that he's done for us. He saved us from the punishment of our sin. He died on the cross for us. He gives us good things. We have a home. We have shelter. We even have wonderful families. Well, we should show our love in return for all that God has done for us and obey him and love him. All right.